the U.S. Catholic bishops have always wanted to expand health care to the poor, and they have always advocated for a greater involvement of the federal government in providing health care. Now, what that means is that if Obama wanted to expand health care, he could have very easily come up with a program that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops would have loved and would have backed 100%. But he didn't do that. What do you think that means, folks, that he didn't do that? It means that abortion is more important to this administration than health care. That's what it means. It means that this initiative, a so-called Obamacare, was not about helping people, it was about controlling people. That's what it was about. That's what it's still about.
February 2009, he announced plans to revoke conscience protection for health workers who refuse to participate in medical activities that go against their beliefs, and fully implemented the plan in February 2011, trying to force nurses and doctors to be involved in referrals or actually performing of abortions. April 2011, for the first time in American history, President Obama urged passage of a non-discrimination law that does not contain hiring protections for religious groups, forcing them to hire people that otherwise wouldn't be fit to work for a church organization because they don't conform their practices to that church beliefs. So if your organization supports traditional marriage, according to the laws he's trying to enforce, you'll have to hire same-sex couples to work at your church and minister to people. So it used to be called conscience objections. They're calling refusal clauses in laws, and they're trying to remove all of them, even though throughout our history we've had protections for people of conscience. In fact, Nancy Pelosi recently said that we people of faith have to get over this conscience thing when it comes to issues of life. That's what she called it, this conscience thing.
So, what is happening to us is that we are seeing the steady erosion of religious liberty. Who would have thought 4 years ago that the government would be attempting to take over, in effect, and manage our schools, our institutions of higher learning, our radio stations, our hospitals? Who would have thought that they would be doing such a thing? I didn't think that. I didn't think that was on the... Oh, some smart person here in the front row had it figured out. Okay, smarty, good for you. I'm glad you knew. But look at the point is, if they're willing to do that in 2012, do you really think they're going to leave our churches alone? No, of course they're not going to leave our churches alone.
Just want to talk for a moment about the vice presidential debate. Joe Biden said that the HHS mandate would not require any Catholic institution to pay for or be a vehicle to get contraception in any insurance policy. He said that is a fact, that is a fact. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops responded to that. This is not a fact, they said. They go on to say that the proposal does not even potentially relieve these organizations from the obligation to pay for contraception and to be a vehicle to get contraception. They will have to serve as a vehicle because they will still be forced to provide their employees with health coverage, and that coverage will have to include sterilization, contraception, abortifacients. They will have to pay for these things because the premiums the organizations and their employees are required to pay will still be applied along with other funds to cover the costs of these drugs and surgeries. And the truth is that this administration is the most pro-abortion and anti-religious freedom administration in our nation's history. Right.
In terms of the HHS mandate, most of you have probably heard one of the biggest problems about it. As you know, it's not about women's rights, it's not about contraception, it's about control. And this administration wants to control religious liberty by defining it out of existence. It's not about what we do in the public square, gathered here as we are as the citizens of this great nation. They're trying to limit it to what you do in church on Sundays and only that. So if you want to go out into the marketplace and you want to help those who are hungry or those who are unemployed, the way the various churches do with their hospitals and with their schools and with the orphanages. If you do those things, you're not engaged in a religious activity, even if it's a church organization, according to this administration. The way they define religious liberty is you have to only minister to people of your own faith. You have to only employ people of your own faith. And by that definition, as you've probably heard, even Jesus and the apostles would not have qualified for the Obama administration's religious liberty exemption. But the issue of control is so vitally important, because if you drive the religious organizations out of the marketplace, so they can't run their schools and run their hospitals and run all these other organizations like adoption services, like they drove Catholic Charities out of the adoption service industry in Massachusetts, in San Francisco, in LA, because they won't place kids with same-sex couples, then who steps in? The government does. And they don't do as good a job, and it's not as efficient, it's not as economic, but you don't have to worry about those pesky religious values getting in the way of the government's agenda.